Sushruta for NEET is now available on the Google Play Store. Try it out for free.
Good morning, students. So, in our last class, last Saturday's class, we studied the chemical properties of water and some properties, not only what its structure and other things, physical properties as well. We have seen and many things we have seen. The last thing that was left is something like the heavy water. We'll study about heavy water and then about the hardness of water, and then this topic will also be over. So let us first look into the heavy water. Heavy, as we know, the deuterium. Deuterium is called heavy hydrogen. So if water contains deuterium instead of protium or the hydrogen atoms, we call such water as the heavy water. Like here, the D2O is heavy water because we know deuterium we represent as D symbol, and the normal hydrogen, which is protium, one isotope of hydrogen, which contains only one proton in its nucleus, we represent as H, and we call hydrogen. And if there is one neutron in the nucleus, one proton plus one neutron, we call it a heavy hydrogen, and heavy hydrogen is nothing but deuterium. And the water that is formed with the deuterium is D2O. So D2O is the most common use is in the as a moderator in nuclear reactors. So moderator means actually nuclear reactors when we will study nuclear chemistry, particular radioactivity, some I think it could be there. So what happens during a nuclear reactors, nuclear reactions, neutrons are being released, and these neutrons now go to the attack to new nuclei and divides the new nuclei as well. But to make this reaction controllable and to have this reaction happen, we need to reduce the energy of that neutron. And to do that, we use this D2O, and that is why it is called moderator. Moderator means someone which reduces the kinetic energy of neutron. If the kinetic energy of neutron is more, it may not go and hit the nucleus to have to initiate the new reaction. So to have that happen, it should move slowly, and if it's moving slowly, then it can actually involve in and the neutron can be involved in the new nuclear reactions. To do that, to make that happen, we use moderator. And moderator, the one of the moderator is D2O. There are other moderators as well. One of them is the D2O, the heavy water. We also use it in exchange reactions to study reaction mechanism. Exchange reactions, particularly suppose a reaction is happening where the exchange of hydrogen is happening in this reaction. So suppose that means the hydrogen is being transferred or exchanged from one molecule to the another molecule, or one portion of the same molecule to another portion. Then if that is the part of the new chemical reaction, and if you instead of hydrogen, if you suppose use deuterium, and deuterium, we know the mass of deuterium is almost twice of the mass of proton, because one proton and one neutron both have nearly mass equal to one atomic mass unit, one AU. So 2 AU will be deuterium and 1 AU is approximately hydrogen. So deuterium's mass is almost twice of the hydrogen. So this reaction, it happens, the same reaction will be happening, because the reaction depends on the number of electrons and the nuclei, and it is the same, the nuclear charge and electrons, and that is same in the deuterium and proton both and hydrogen both. But what happens, because of the increased mass, the reaction rate becomes slow, and because of the increased mass, the speed at which the hydrogen is being transferred or deuterium is being transferred, it is reduced. So that is something that we study in the exchange reactions, and we can tell whether the hydrogen is involved in that reaction or not. This is what people measure, and this is called a kinetic isotope measuring, or kinetic isotope effects. People use it, and how is this ratio reaction rate, that people will, based on that, define how much involvement of hydrogen is there. If the hydrogen is not involved in that reaction, so rate of reaction will not be affected, because we know hydrogen is not involved, something else is involved, and you have changed only hydrogen to deuterium, so the reaction will not be affected. And if the hydrogen is indeed involved in that reaction, so rate of reaction will become slower. Heavy water can be prepared by exhaustive electrolysis of water. Exhaustive electrolysis of water is electrolyzing water for a longer duration in a cell. Various stages it passed through, and the volume of water is reduced in each stage. And each step, at the last stage, we get maximum percentage of product or maximum percentage of water. It's like this is the deuterium that want to get the D2O, the maximum percentage of D2O will we get. And each step, the percentage of D2O will increase because you are using, and even normal water also contains D2O. So this is how it is. A stage you are in keep increasing D2O concentration, and finally you get the maximum percentage of D2O. D2O can also be formed as a byproduct in some fertilizer industries, and this is what is in details is not required for us to understand. So it is not radioactive. This is something that we should remember. The deuterium is non-radioactive, and oxygen normal isotope is also not radioactive. So D2O is not radioactive. This is okay. So it is used for preparation of deuterium compounds. So D2O, this heavy water, is used for the formation of the deuterated compounds. Deuterated compounds or deuterium compounds. For example, if you want to make calcium, this is a calcium hydroxide. If this is OH, so the corresponding deuterium or deuterated calcium hydroxide, if you want to make, then you can use calcium carbide plus D2O. And the calcium carbide plus D2O, what happens? The calcium will react with the D2, which is like hydrogen. The same reaction that would have happened with the normal hydrogen, you will get the same reaction. But in the place of hydrogen, you will see deuterium. So if it was a normal water H2O, then you will find C2H2 plus CaOH twice. But if since it is deuterated water, deuterium heavy water, so what it forms? C2D2 plus CaOD twice. Similarly, the SO3 gas plus reacts with D2O to form D2SO4. SO3 gas, we know when it reacts, we have seen last time when SO3 reacts with the oxo compounds of a sulfur, when it reacts, or a non-metal, when it reacts with water, it forms acid. This is what we have studied last time. General thing. So it is a oxo compound of sulfur, and it forms that is SO3, it forms H2SO4. Since we use D2O, so it forms D2SO4. So chemically it is H2SO4 itself. Only thing is that its molecular mass is more than H2SO4. That's all. So Al2C3, the aluminum carbide, when it reacts with D2O, it forms CD4. CD4, we know methane, it corresponds to methane, CH4 plus ALOD thrice. This is aluminum hydroxide. And deuterated aluminum hydroxide, you can say. The chemical properties of heavy water are same, as I have explained, are the same as that of the light water. Only the rate of reaction becomes slow. And why rate of reaction becomes slow? Because now the heavy nuclei is involved in the reaction, and then even during the reaction, some bond is forming, some new bond is breaking, and this some nuclei is moving from this place to other place, and because of that, the heavier molecules will move slowly. If the same energy is given to the lighter and heavier nuclei, the heavier nuclei will move slowly, a lighter will move faster. This is what we know with the same energy, like with the kinetic energy, with that half mv square. So v will be equal to kinetic energy divided by 2 into kinetic energy divided by m, and you take a square over. So what you know, the mass is more than the velocity is less. So only the rate of reaction becomes slow, which is used in the technique kinetic isotope dating. This is what I have already explained here, to find out the mechanism of certain chemical reactions. Now let us move to hard and soft water. In hard and soft water, we know, you might have heard about the hard water and also the soft water. What is the hard water and what is the soft water? But we know that the hard water doesn't give leather with the soap, and soft water it gives. So you can wash with, you can clean your clothes in soft water, but you cannot use it, and you can not do it efficiently when you use the hard water. And also hard water has, we find difficulty in the making pulses, the cooking pulses. There are many examples of that. So, and the thing is, if you want to make hard water to a softer, what things you need to do? Even we know that if the hard water do not give leather and soft water gives. So what is the property of that hard water which prevents it to give leather with the soap? And this is what we need to understand. And this property is, as I said earlier in the beginning, the first class, when I started this lecture series, it says that everything that you understand, you see in your life, that is somehow associated fundamentally with the chemistry or chemical transformations. And here again, the hard water, why hard water doesn't get together with soap? This is what the fundamentally it is associated with the chemistry and the chemical phenomena that is happening at the microscopic or quantum level. So let us first understand this. Rainwater is almost pure. Why rainwater? Because you know the condensed water it is pure water. However, while precipitation, this rainwater also reacts with some dissolved gas in the atmosphere. So though their percentage that is dissolved, like suppose SO3 is there, so some amount of H2SO4 will be formed, but that percentage is very less, so it is almost pure. That is why we call almost pure, because the gases, their reaction with the liquid water, we know it's very slow itself. Even if the water is there, pure water, there's enough water like oceans, and it is just something by coming, it is coming here. So the very uh, less amount of impurity is there in the rainwater. However, we know the water is a very good solvent. So why water flows on the surfaces of the earth? So there are many rocks, salts, many things. So those with all those ions, cations, and anions, it actually while passing through, it dissolves them, and so the water in the lakes, ponds, or any many places, even the oceans, you know that is the ultimate thing. So it contains many impurities. Many impurities, it also contains some nowadays pesticide and other things, but even the impurities here, if you want to tell into the form, ionic impurities, many dissolved ions are there, whether they are cations or anions. So the presence of calcium and magnesium salts in the form of hydrogen carbonate we also called bicarbonate. Carbonate, you know, CO3 2 minus, so bicarbonate is HCO3 single minus. So HCO3 minus is also called bicarbonate or hydrogen carbonate, or the chloride or sulfate in water makes water hard. So what it means, that if the magnesium chloride, suppose why water is passing through a surface and the magnesium chloride is there on the surface, so that magnesium chloride will go into water, it will dissolve in the water. If the not magnesium chloride, even magnesium sulfate or the calcium chloride, calcium sulfate or magnesium carbonate, or magnesium carbonate or calcium bicarbonate or magnesium bicarbonate, they can also be dissolved, go into the water, and so these things will make water hard. And why they make hard, this is what we are going to understand. So what hard water does not give lather with soap. This is what we have already seen. Water free from soluble salts of calcium and magnesium is called soft water. Let us first know soft water means if there is no salt of calcium and magnesium, soluble salts. So we call such water as a soft water. Soluble salt is what salt is not soluble, somehow it comes into the water. It is anyway, it is not mixed with water. It won't affect the property of water. We affect it will affect the property of water only when it is dissolved in water, means when it makes solution, whether that is a concentration or concentrated solution or very diluted solution. This that is a different thing. So usually it is a very dilute solution. This is what we know. So what hard water forms precipitate with soap. Why it forms precipitate? Because with the soap, because we know soap, in forming soaps we use, if you know this fatty acids, the one kind type of chemicals is called fatty acids, and this fatty acid actually when they form different kind of bond with glycerol and some other molecules, it forms lipid, phospholipids, and kind of, and the phosphate is attached, it will form phospholipids. And or this, even if it is attached to glycerol or some other kind of molecules, that, or at least two fatty acids, so we call it lipid. And the oil, fat, all kind of things, that wax that we see, by when the ghee there, actually the fatty acid fundamentally. So the fatty acid means the fatty acid is a long chain hydrocarbon, and then one carboxylic acid group is there. Like for example, this C17H35, this is a hydrocarbon, and at the end of this hydrocarbon, the COOH group was there. And now COOH group, when it is in water, this is acidic. It dissociated, it ionized into H plus, and this ion this carboxylate ion. So that carboxylate ion, if the N plus any cation is there, so it will be like, we can consider that as a salt. So actually soaps contains this salt. This is a fatty acid salt. One of the commonly used fatty acid salts is the stearic acid salt, or the sodium. This is sodium stearate. This is a sodium stearate. If there is no sodium, there is a stearate. And if in the presence of sodium we have hydrogen, then we will call stearic acid. So stearic acid, this sodium stearate is nothing but a salt of sodium stearate, and this is what is present in the soaps. And these are, anyway, these are dissolved. These ions are, these ions are soluble in water, they get ionized. However, if the magnesium and calcium is there in the water, they forms very strong, very stable complex with this stearate or any kind of this carboxylate. And when they formed, like you can see, the stearate twice in, because magnesium ion is there, it has two charge, or the calcium ion, it will have two charge, so it will interact with two such ions to make things neutral. So this complex is very much stable, it gets precipitated. So whatever the stearate that you are using to washing clothes, and that is also the phenomena that we later understand how it works, and that the micelle formation happens, these micelles, and how it is formed, perhaps it is somewhere there in the surface chemistry that we will see when we will study it in a bit more detail. So this stearate, which was actually used in the cleaning clothes and actually which makes the leather, now it is used to form a very stable compound, and it gets settled out, and it gets settled, so you don't see any leather when using the soap with the hard water. And this Na plus anyway is released, and this was anyway soluble in water. So because of the formation of this stable coordination compound, and this leather formation doesn't happen, and soap doesn't work in that water. So what hard water therefore is unsuitable for laundry. So as we know, we have understand, it is unsuitable for laundry, cleaning clothes. Hard water is also harmful for boilers. And a boiler is what? Boiler, perhaps you know, but I just want to explain. A fuel burning apparatus for heating water is called boiler. So because of deposition of salts in the form of scale reduces the efficiency of boiler. So the scales are being formed and is precipitated. This is what it forms a scale, and the scales will be there in the apparatus, and finally it will what? It will damage the boiler, and not only damage, some it will form insulator when we will deposit on the boiler, and it form insulating layer, and the heat that is providing to boil water, that is somehow being reduced to pass through to water, and that was efficiency decreased. And not only and so it is not good for even the boiler. The hardness of water, and based on this any kind of hardness, whether any kind of salt of magnesium and calcium is there, means that the magnesium and calcium ion is there in the soluble form in water, then it forms the hardness. And this hardness could be of the two types: temporary hardness or permanent hardness. Now, suppose a water sample which contains only the sodium or the magnesium bicarbonates. So the water is passing through certain area, and magnesium and calcium bicarbonate is got dissolved in water. So the bicarbonate ion is there, and the magnesium or calcium ions are there. So this is what this kind of this water will we call it, causes temporary hardness. And temporary hardness because there are certain easy methods by which you can easily remove the hardness of the water. And one method is a simple boiling. And by boiling, what you do, while boiling magnesium bicarbonate or the calcium bicarbonate, magnesium bicarbonate is converted into magnesium hydroxide, and magnesium hydroxide is also not dissolved in water, it is precipitated out. It's KSP. The ionic product is sorry, the KSP solubility product is very low, very small, and because the solubility product is very small, it precipitated out. Most of the MgOH is precipitated out, and that you can filter out. And similarly, calcium hydroxide, calcium bicarbonate, it forms calcium carbonate, doesn't form calcium hydroxide. And usually, in the calcium carbonate that it gets precipitated and we filter out to get a So get soft water. The filtrate will contain the soft water. So the thing is, why magnesium forms magnesium or magnesium hydroxide is precipitated out in the case of magnesium, and not the and calcium hydroxide in the case of calcium. The reason behind this is, if you remember the magnesium hydroxide, if I just say magnesium hydroxide, its solubility product is little more than the solubility product of magnesium carbonate. And in this case, and the magnesium, but when you look at the magnesium hydroxide, so magnesium hydroxide after ionization will give Mg2 plus 2OH minus ion. So solubility product will be 2, actually S, suppose the S is the solubility S is for the Mg2 plus ion, and 2S will be for the hydroxide ion, hydroxyl ions, OH minus. So the Ksp will be S into 2S square, means it will be 4S cube. So the solubility, that is S, the dissolved Mg2 plus ion, and the Ksp, some value suppose it is there, is slightly more than Ksp of the magnesium carbonate. But the case of magnesium carbonate, the solubility of magnesium and the concentration of magnesium ion and the carbonate ion both will be same. It will be S and into S. So it is S square only. So the value of S will be a square root of Ksp. But in the case of magnesium hydroxide, it will be the cube root of Ksp. So even though the magnesium hydroxide Ksp value, the solubility product is little high, but even though, because it forms MgOH thrice, and the solubility is a square root of a solubility cube root of solubility product, so the magnesium ion, dissolved magnesium ion in the case of MgOH twice is less, is as comparison to the dissolved magnesium ion in the case of MgCO3. So MgOH twice is precipitated out. This will filters precipitate out, we filter out to get a soft water. Simply the reaction is magnesium bicarbonate, and while boiling, what you are doing, you are not heating it. So while heating, because of the temperature, it decomposes. And during decomposition, the carbon dioxide gas is revolved, it is released, and the magnesium hydroxide is being formed. So out of this product, one CO2, this is one CO2 plus OH twice, so two are there, so two CO2 and two OH, and two OH means magnesium OH twice. The calcium bicarbonate, it forms on heating calcium carbonate. Even if you do not understand this part, that's okay. Just remember that calcium bicarbonate on heating gives calcium carbonate, and the water and carbon dioxide, calcium carbonate, which is precipitated out, which solubility product is very small, the value is very small, and magnesium hydroxide is precipitated out in the case of magnesium bicarbonate, and so these things can be filtered out to get soft water. The second method that you will usually use to remove temporary hardness is the Clark method. Or Clark method, in this method, calculated amount of calcium hydroxide, or this is called the lime water. So lime is used. So when you use lime, means the calcium hydroxide and the magnesium bicarbonate is already there, means the magnesium ion is there in the actually, and bicarbonate ions, because these two are there and they react. So what we do, that Mg forms MgOH twice, and is how the exchange reaction happens. And this calcium bicarbonate, what happens actually while reacting, it forms calcium carbonate, which is thermally more stable, and plus two water molecules are released. And so magnesium bicarbonate on reaction with calcium hydroxide, it forms magnesium hydroxide. You can see simply it is exchanged. Magnesium, these anions are exchanged. So MgOH twice is here. And now one can expect calcium bicarbonate, but calcium carbonate is more stable than calcium bicarbonate. So calcium carbonate is ultimately formed, and bicarbonate means the calcium bicarbonate is decomposed into calcium carbonate and water. And so we ultimately get calcium carbonate in water. And that the calcium bicarbonate is already there, and calcium hydroxide. So calcium hydroxide is there, and so it forms calcium in this calcium carbonate, and which is precipitated out, plus 2H2O water that is there already in the solution. So this way people, the Clark's method, by using lime, calculated amount of lime. Why calculated amount of lime? Because even the calcium should not be more in amount. Even if the calcium hydroxide is there, or some hydroxide, though it is, will be there now into the calcium ion will be there in the still in the water, and that is because of the added extra lime. So we want actually to remove calcium or magnesium from the water, and the bicarbonate, because the bicarbonate is already there and it removes out with that bicarbonate, with the bicarbonate while reacting it with, that is why bicarbonate is removed, or in the form of carbonate or something like that. But our aim is not to remove bicarbonate, because we have seen bicarbonate doesn't react with the soap. Our aim is to remove calcium, and if you add extra amount of calcium here in the form of lime, that will again not serve the purpose. You will find the same difficulty, and that difficulty will be because of the excess use of lime. So we use limited, or the calculated amount, not limited, calculated amount, what exact amount of calcium lime is required, and that amount we use to remove temporary hardness, using Clark's method. And that we can actually, how much amount it is required from this equation, a stoichiometric reaction, you can easily find out how much amount. Suppose magnesium is there, if you know the concentration, with that this reaction you can find out if this 1 mole is there, so 2 moles of calcium carbonate is, calcium hydroxide or lime is required, and with the calcium carbonate 1:1 ratio is required. Now the permanent hardness is due to the presence of calcium chloride or calcium sulfate, or magnesium chloride or magnesium sulfate. So again, the while water is moving, running off from the surfaces, what the earth surface, and while and there, if suppose magnesium or calcium carbonate or magnesium or calcium sulfate is there, so what happens? They will also go and into the water, and they'll be dissolved there. And that, if that is there, so it will cause permanent hardness. And this permanent, why permanent hardness? Because this permanent hardness, this hardness cannot be removed by ordinary method, by simple boiling, and this Clark method that we have used. To remove it, we need special techniques, and those techniques actually the chemical other reactions or something like that we do. The treatment, the other method, one method is the treatment with washing soda. And washing soda is sodium carbonate chemically. So sodium carbonate, Na2CO3, this is the washing soda. So if you use washing soda reacts with the soluble calcium and magnesium chlorides and sulfates in hard water to form insoluble carbonates. So if the magnesium chloride is there in the water and you add washing soda, sodium carbonate, so this again the exchange reaction will happen. This magnesium or the calcium carbonate will be formed, which will be precipitated, which is insoluble, precipitated out, and the NaCl. The NaCl, even if NaCl is there, it doesn't mean it will not cause any hardness in water. Why? Because sodium doesn't form any complex with the stearate, or it doesn't form a stable complex, coordination complex with the stearate ion of the soap. So it doesn't affect it. So even if it is there, that's okay, that's not a problem. Now the magnesium sulfate, or given the calcium sulfate ion is there, it can also react with the sodium carbonate or the washing soda that we have used. It forms again the magnesium carbonate, then again the exchange, and the sodium sulfate. The exchange reaction will happen. So the magnesium or calcium carbonate or magnesium is formed in both the reactions, whether it is magnesium or calcium chloride or magnesium or calcium sulfate, and the NaCl or NaSO4 will correspondingly be formed, and that is dissolved in water, and that doesn't affect the laser formation with the soap. So finally we have removed the hardness of the water. The another method that is more common is the Calgon's method. Calgon method means commercially, the hexametaphosphate is called Calgon. Its commercial name is Calgon. So the process to remove the water using Calgon is called Calgon's method or Calgon's process. So the Calgon sodium hexametaphosphate is a hexametaphosphate. This P6O8 is hexametaphosphate, and sodium is used. The sodium hexametaphosphate, what it does, it ionized, it forms 2 Na plus ion, and then this, correspondingly 2 negative ion will be, a negative charge will be there on Na4P6O18. The 6 Na plus were there and 2 Na plus gets out, it gets ionized, and 4 Na plus is still there in complexation with P6O18 2 minus. Now Na4P6O18, if the Ma2 magnesium or calcium ions are there, means M2 plus ions, we can represent those ions as M2 plus ion because they have two positive charge or double positive charge. So these ions now they can form a more stable complex than the sodium, and the one ion will go into this and replace two sodium ions because one sodium ion has one positive charge. So if one ion of the magnesium or calcium is going, it will remove two Na plus ions. So two Na plus ions will now be removed, which are here, and one Mg plus or Ca plus ion will go and will form again this complex anion. And this complex anion, it keeps Mg2 plus and Ca2 plus ions in the solution. This is anion and this is still in water. This is still dissolved in water. However, even if it is still dissolved in water, magnesium or calcium ions are not free to react with the or form complex with the stearate. And so even if they are in the solution in the form of this complex anion, they won't affect the lather formation. And so that is what our purpose is. So the one way we are removing the permanent hardness, and this time we have not formed formed precipitate. We have instead formed a complex ion which actually utilize all the magnesium and calcium ions that were there in the hard water. And the third method, the common method, is the ion exchange method, and this way particularly the use of these methods are increasing day by day. As we go down, the more refined method are being evolved, and the ion exchange method is a better method than these two methods. So this method is ion exchange method is also called zeolite or permuted process. Permuted, you might have remembered that zeolite is also called permuted, and the permuted is nothing but aluminium aluminum silicate, which is an anion. So silicate is SiO4 and 4 minus ion, negative charge is there. SiO4 4 minus is silicate, and if the aluminum has 3 plus charge, sodium has 1 plus charge, so if they come together form sodium aluminum silicate. Aluminum is actually it's a covalently linked with this, it's we called aluminum. This is the covalent character of that aluminum is more when it forms bond with this silicate. So we call the zeolite or permuted. So AlSiO4 is zeolite or permuted, and that we represent as Z, zeolite, and Na is NaZ. One can represent zeolite. So this is entire thing is zeolite that we can represent as NaAlSi4 as NaZ. And when it is added to hard water, exchange reaction takes place. And exchange reaction, what exchange reaction will happen again? Now the cations will be exchanged from the zeolite. And this zeolite, this anion is there, and that anion which contains aluminum silicate, this is aluminum silicate, and aluminum silicate now forms a stronger bond with magnesium or calcium ions. So the magnesium and calcium ions will come and form complex with this aluminum silicate, and the sodium ion will go into the solution. The sodium ions go into the solution, and now the magnesium and calcium ions are being utilized to form this stable complex, which is a solid. And the permuted or zeolite is said to be exhausted when all the sodium in it is used. So what we know that if all the sodium is, because this reaction is the exchange reaction, if all the sodium is being used, means if you have only this compound, so no further reaction will be happening, and so the whatever the extra hardness that is there now, it cannot remove. Means this whatever the product that is formed, this is not of any use of us. So we need to regenerate this. We need to regenerate this to again use this thing. To regenerate, what people do, so we use Mg2 and they treat with the NaCl, and what NaCl, very high concentration of NaCl is there, Na plus ion is there, even though it doesn't form very stable bond with aluminum silicate, but since its concentration is more, it can remove Im2 plus ions of magnesium or calcium ion. So we regenerated this zeolite, and that we can again use in the again used to remove hardness of the water. Now the fourth and most commonly and the most modern method is the use of synthetic resin. And then nowadays the hard water is softened by using synthetic cation exchangers. So there resin with, there could be two kind of exchangers, cation exchangers and anion exchangers. So the cation exchangers, this method is more efficient than zeolite process, and zeolite process were more efficient than calgon. Calgon was more efficient than the calcium carbonate, the washing soda that we have seen at the first. So synthetic, what happens actually in the synthetic resin method, so cation exchange resin contains large organic molecules. So there are organic molecules which contains sulfonic group. This is a sulfonic acid. RSO3H is called sulfonic acid. The R is a larger hydrocarbon and the organic molecule. So may not be hydrocarbons, so organic molecule which may contain heteroatoms as well. And anyway, SO3 is the high sulfur and oxygen are the heteroatoms, so it's an organic molecule. So RSO3 that we use, and SO3 is an acid we call sulfonic acid, like RCOOH is the carboxylic acid, that is acid, and this sulfonic acid is more acidic than the carboxylic acid, RCOOH. So this actually, when you use this in the water, so H plus ion will go into the water. So this is the sulfonate formation will happen. This sulfonate, when the ions are there, sodium ion is there, this sulfonate Na plus and this sulfonate which is at negative charge, they will interact anyway. That the complex or the salt formation that we can understand it as a salt formation. So what happens? The ion exchange regime, so which we can represent as RSO3H, the sulfonic acid ion exchange regime. R is a very large organic molecule or organic framework, you can say. So it's a very large organic framework, and there SO3 groups are there at surfaces at many places. And this SO3 groups actually change to R plus Na when it is treated with NaCl. So NaCl, when it is treated, means NaCl solution, and NaCl solution H plus ion will be washed out because this is very acidic, and H plus ion will be there. Now it will form sulfonate, and the sulfonate now can interact electrostatically with the Na plus ion that we have used in the NaCl concentrated, very concentrated NaCl solution. So it forms RNS. Actually, it forms RSO3Na, and RSO3 now here I am representing as R prime. So R prime is RSO3, and this we call the resin anion. R prime is RSO3, and RSO3 is RSO. It has one negative charge, so RSO3 minus we can represent it as a anion resin or resin anion. The resin exchange just Na plus ion with Ca2 plus ion and Mg2 plus ion. So the similar exchange we have seen in the case of zeolites as well. So zeolites also exchange Na plus ion with the magnesium or calcium ion. Here in the cationic resins, we are also exchanging this because these are cations we are replacing the cation. So we are replacing or exchanging sodium ions with the magnesium ions or calcium ions. And so this exchange happens. So the R2M will form because one magnesium ion will interact with the two resin anions, because one resin anion has only one negative charge and magnesium or calcium has two positive charge. And this thing perhaps I hope you know, because all the compounds when you are representing, it should be electrically neutral ideally. And this Na plus ion is released, it is there in the water in the hydrated form. The resin, this resin, now what we again see that this resin is being used, R2M, this is consumed. So this resin can be regenerated, as we saw in the case of zeolite, we use NaCl solution, and this resin we also use the concentrated NaCl solution to regenerate this resin. So pure demineralized, now this is one thing that you can remove the permanent hardness, or you can remove calcium or magnesium ions. Sometimes nowadays what we are calling the most filtered water, that the mineral water, that is actually this is a demineralized water, we call the mineral water. So this usually, so pure demineralized or deionized water free from all soluble mineral salts is obtained by passing water successively through cation exchanger. So cation exchange, which is actually there when this is replaced, cations is replaced, the H plus ion is released into the solution. And then we have anion exchanger. So anion exchanger will exchange anion, cation exchanger will exchange cations. And here in this case, we have used only cation exchanger, simply cation exchanger, because we have exchanged cation and the cation forms this thing, and this resin you can take out this form solid, and you take out and you can regenerate somewhere the concentrated NaCl solution, and anyway that has removed the permanent hardness on the Mg2 plus ion or calcium 2 plus ions. However, the complete demineralization can also happen. We can remove all cations and anions from the water. Or and this for that what we use the cation exchanger and anion exchanger both in tandem in the steps. So first, if you use cation exchanger, the cation exchange process. So what we use the RS, the R prime H, that this is this kind of thing we will use. So the RS when we use, and Mg2 plus ion is there, so it forms MR2, the same thing that we have seen earlier, and 2H plus. And this process, what will happen, this H plus, it will be released into the solution, into the water, and that this will form aqueous solution because we have used RH. Earlier, when I explained here, RH, I have said it has already gone, it will be first washed with certain water, the H plus will go in that water, and that water, whatever that water is acidic water. Now we use that this Na, R prime Na to exchange. Here, if you use directly the cation exchanger without when ionizing it, the H plus ion will be in the water. And now, if this cation, so we have in the cation exchange process, H plus exchanges from Na plus, Ca2 plus, or Mg2 plus. So here, what we do, the Na plus it can exchange. We have seen with the NaCl, this H plus proton is actually exchanged here with the any cation, all the cations, Na plus, Ca plus, Mg plus, any cation that is there. But during the process, you should remember that the acid, this becomes acidic. The H plus ions are is now in the solution, now in the water, and this process results in the proton release, and thus makes the water acidic. However, in the next step, we use anion exchanger or anion exchange process that is being followed. So the anion exchanger, they are actually the chemically there are NH2 are again the very large organic framework, and NH2 is there, and NH2 is the water. We add water, so water will ionize. It forms NH3 plus and OH minus. So this RNH3 plus and OH minus is there, and this one actually this one acts as this kind of salt, and this acts as an anion exchanger. So if the some anion is there, suppose the Cl minus ion or any ion, even the sulfate ion. So if the anions are there, now this anion is exchanged with the OH minus ions. So now anion will come here, and OH minus will go into the solution. So RNH3 plus and X minus formation will happen. This is a solid state. This the salt is a more stable. It's a solid. Means its solubility is less, so it forms a solid, and OH minus ion is now free into the solution. And if you use only anion exchange process or anion exchanger, so what we will get, the OH minus ion is released into the solution will become basic. But this we do after we make these things. So H plus ion is released because of the cation exchange process, and OH minus ions will be released because of the in the anion exchange process. And this H plus and OH minus ions, their numbers will be the same. They will react to form water molecule, and so this H plus and OH minus ions, they will be, and now the solution will become again neutral. And the anions that can be exchanged with OH minus, any anion that you see, the Cl minus, bicarbonate, sulfate, this is what that in the hardness we have three ions we have seen. Other anions can also be removed there. The exhausted cation and anion exchange resin beds are regenerated by treating with dilute acid and alkali solution. So this, if we this resin bed, now if there is no water, the whatever the resin bed, that is exhausted resin bed, that will contain MR2. Now if you treat this one with the acid, that this will remove metal and it will form again RH. And if you treat this one with the base, and so will form this. So that then again you can use this cation anion exchange resins to again remove all the demineralized water. Now I think this is over. Let us come to the next topic, the hydrogen peroxide. So we have seen how what is the hardness with the temporary or permanent hardness of water, and how this hardness can be removed, and why this hardness is there, and these things we have seen in detail. So let us come to the hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide, is a molecule, this where H2O2 molecule full of formula is H2O2, and this H2O2, I have explained it earlier as well. There is OO bond between two oxygen atoms, and then two OH bonds are also there in hydrogen peroxide. So there is one OO bond and two OH bonds, and these two OH bonds belongs to two different oxygen atoms. And this is the method for this hydrogen peroxide is also very useful for us. We know that hydrogen peroxide, it acts as both reducing and oxidizing agent. It is used in the bleaching of the textiles, and also the paper pulp industry, which is also used in the bleaching hairs and so on. So it is also important, used as a pollution control treatment of domestic and industrial effluents. So it has certain use. This is very important. And so let us first understand how it is prepared. So it can be prepared from the barium peroxide. So barium, when it forms oxygen compound, it forms peroxide. As we know, the sodium also forms sodium peroxide. So barium peroxide, it contains water of crystallization, 8 water molecules in the crystal. And so barium peroxide, when it is acidified barium peroxide is used, we obtain hydrogen peroxide. And what is the acidified barium peroxide is? Barium peroxide solution is there, you add H2SO4 by acid. And when you add acid, what you form? BaSO4, which is precipitated, and BaSO4 will be formed. And then 8 water molecules are there. Now this free H2 will react with 2O2, that is the BaO2, and so this peroxide will be formed. And so the hydrogen peroxide is formed here. What does it mean? Again, this H2 goes with this O2, which is peroxide, O bond. It's called peroxide bond. It forms H2O2, and 8 water of crystallization, they are free now, because now the compound is different, and barium goes with the sulfate to form barium sulfate. So barium sulfate is filtered off, because this is a precipitate, this is a solid, this solubility is very less, Ksp is very low, this is the solubility product, and this is filtered off behind water and H2O2. So what is left is water and H2O2, and removing it, now one can remove the excess amount of water by evaporation under reduced pressure, giving hydrogen peroxide. Why reduced pressure? One thing that we will understand why reduced pressure, but first let us understand evaporation. Why evaporation? Because the boiling point of H2O2 is more than the boiling point of water. So its boiling point is more than 150 degrees centigrade. I think it is 153 degrees centigrade. So it's more, if you boil it, so water will be the one which will first boil. It's kind of distillation thing you can do. You can distill it. So this is a distillation to form even the concentrated H2O2 solution. And this we do at reduced pressure, because H2O2 can also on heating decompose. And when it is decomposed, it forms H2O, water vapor, plus water plus oxygen molecule. And if the pressure is low, if the pressure is high, what will happen? So anyway, that I think that will I'll explain it later on. Currently it will confuse you. I'll see that the reaction. When you'll see that reaction, I'll explain. Another method is by electrolysis of 50% H2SO4. 50% H2SO4, what we use H2SO4, when its solution is there, H2SO4 solution, then the water H2SO4, it gets ionized into H plus ion and this HSO4 minus ion. And these ions on electrolysis, what happens on electrolysis at cathode, we know what happens. The oxidation happens, and actually oxidation, what is there? The H2SO4 is there, H plus ion and HSO4 minus ions are there. So the H plus ion goes to anode, goes to cathode, and a reduction happens at cathode. And so what happens? It accepts 2 electrons and to form hydrogen molecule. So 2H plus ion accepts 2 electrons to form 1 hydrogen molecule, and these 2 electrons, they comes from the oxidation at the anode, and the oxidation at the of HSO4 minus ion happens at the anode, and this forms peroxydisulfuric acid, or this is peroxydisulfuric acid H2S2O8, or this is and this is anion is there, so we also called a peroxydisulfate H2O8, 2 minus ions. So this peroxydisulfate ion or anion is there on the peroxydisulfuric acid, plus 2 electrons is removed, and these two electrons are used here at the cathode in the reduction of the protons and H plus ions. Now this peroxydisulfuric acid, when it is distilled means the water is already there. When it is distilled, while distillation, what it forms? H2O2 plus H2SO4. Why? Because the S2O8 H2O8 structure, if you look at, it is sulfur, then O, then sulfur, and each sulfur is now attached to two oxides, means double bond O and one OH group. Each sulfur has two S double bond O and one OH group attached to it and one O group attached to it. And so now this O group is nothing but it's a peroxide, and this peroxide on distillation, actually the SO4 goes out there, and that peroxide O reacts with the abstract proton from the water, and then then we have proton is, when once proton is removed from the water will have OH minus ion, and that OH minus ion actually reacts with the one SO group, and then it releases that sulfuric acid out. Or other ways, what is the H2O? Water has a lone pair, and that lone pair, it attacks to the sulfur, where it will have positive charge, because all the sulfur is associated with oxygen atom, which are higher electronegative atoms. So the some positive charge is there. Because of the positive charge, lone pair of water will be attracted, and once it will be attracted, the one sulfur group with O minus ion will be released, and now this sulfur OH minus H plus ion now will go to OH minus. The next time that same thing happen, I think if see the reaction, you will understand. But anyway, if you don't understand, perhaps these kind of things we see in organic chemistry. So we will see later on such mechanisms, how we will define mechanism of certain organic reaction. The similar reaction will be happening here as well. So H2, just you remember this H2O8 2 minus or H2SO8, on distillation at reduced pressure gives H2O2 plus sulfuric acid, and sulfuric acid now here is regenerated. We used sulfuric acid and now again got the sulfuric acid back. So sulfuric acid is actually the whatever the peroxide is forming, it is forming from the water. It is not forming from the sulfuric acid. Effectively, eventually, those sulfuric acid is involved there. The reaction, so it's a kind of catalysis that happens here. The hydrolysis of peroxide yields hydrogen peroxide. This is one of the electrolytic oxidation of acidified sulfate solution happens at high current density. We need to use high current density here. This is reduced, and the method, this method to form H2O2 is now used in laboratory to form D2O2, the deuterated hydrogen peroxide. The third method, that is the industrial method, is the to form for the formation of H2O2 hydrogen peroxide is the auto oxidation of 2-ethyl anthraquinol. This is anthracene. If there is no OH and no extra C2H5, only benzene, 3 benzene rings fused to each other. If they are there, this 3 fused benzene rings is called anthracene. And anthracene, if your numbering will be there, this is called 1 and 2. So this is 2-ethyl, or and you can use any other alkyl groups as well for this reaction. So you can call 2-alkyl and 2-ethyl, and this OH2OH groups are here. That is why it is a quinol. So this is quinol. So 2-ethyl anthraquinol. This is anthraquinol. And when this reacts with the air and palladium in the presence of palladium catalyst and also the hydrogen, it forms H2O2, and 2-ethyl anthraquinol is formed. Quinol. This is sorry, spelling is there, the error. Quinone. This is anthraquinone. 2-ethyl anthraquinone. This is 2-ethyl anthraquinol. So this is oxidated product. This gets oxidized, and how it is oxidized? The OH group is there. Now this H plus ion now is removed, or the hydrogen is removed here from here, and that hydrogen reacts with the oxygen to form H2O2 ultimately. And by this method, 1% H2O2 is formed. 1% which is extracted with water and concentrated to about 30% by mass by distillation under reduced pressure. As I said, distillation. Why distillation we use? The boiling point of water and H2O2 is different. Water boils at lower temperature at 100 degrees centigrade, H2O2 at 153 degrees centigrade. So one can use distillation process to separate them out, but that is not 100. Then some efficiency is there with the fractional distillation method. So by this fractional distillation method, one can concentrate it up to 30% by mass. H2O2, 30% H2O2 by mass. It can further be concentrated up to 85% by careful distillation at low pressure. So when at low pressure, one can do the careful distillation, and one can form 85% H2O2 solution. And now, but what will, if you want to obtain pure H2O2, so then you have to, what you have to do, you have to frozen out this solution, 85% H2O2 solution. And the frozen out, what happens actually, the H2O2 is there, and so while doing that, remaining so careful distillation, the remaining water can be frozen out to obtain pure H2O2. So water will be frozen out to give H2O2, pure H2O2. So the physical properties of H2O2, if you look at the H2O2, in the pure state is almost colorless. You might have seen H2O2 while it is used in cleaning wounds, and particularly you might have seen when you go to for any treatment and dressing of a wound, you see some liquid is used for the dressing, and that liquid is the disinfectant. It disinfect whatever if the bacterial infection is there. They wash it with the H2O2 water, and that water, the color you might have seen, it's a very light blue color, pale blue color, which appears as if it is almost colorless. H2O2, the hydrogen peroxide, is miscible with water in all proportion and forms a hydrate, H2O2 H2O. It's a hydrate of H2O2. So H2O2 is miscible in water in all the concentration, all the proportions, all the compositions. A 30% H2O2 solution is marketed as 100 volume hydrogen peroxide. A 30% H2O2, by it is considered a 100 volume. 100V is reported on the bottle. It means, because as I have said, that H2O2, it decomposes naturally into water and O2 gas. And when, hello, okay, so H2O2 decomposes into water and oxygen. And in the decomposition, what happens? The 100 volume means 1 volume of H2O2 when you use, 100 volume of oxygen gas will be evolved after decomposition or on decomposition. Means if I use 1 liter of H2O2 solution, I'll obtain 100 liter of oxygen gas after complete decomposition of this H2O2. And this is what it means. And if I use 1 ml, so I'll get 30 ml oxygen gas. So the gas is here, the volume is the liquid, and the gas is oxygen is gas. This also one can measure the volume at STP. So commercially marketed sample is 10V. The commercially marketed is the 10 volume, and 10 volume, 100 volume is 30%, then 10 volume will be what? 10, 100 divided by 10, so 10, so you have to divide 30 by again also by 10, so it is 3% H2O2. The other physical properties, if you look at the melting point, it's 272.4 Kelvin. Density is 1.44, it's more denser than water. Boiling point is 423. 423 we know, 423 is more than, and 73, I think 150 degrees centigrade is the boiling point of water. Sorry, H2O2. So it's 150. If I said 150, it's 150 here. That is according to this data. So this is what 150 degree centigrade. The degree centigrade is the boiling point of H2O2 hydrogen peroxide. The Kelvin is 423, and its viscosity is also more. So in the centrifuge it is 1.25. You don't have to remember these numbers. The vapor pressure is 1.9, dielectric constant 70.7, which is lower, lesser than water. Water, its dielectric constant is 78.5, around 78.5. So its dielectric constant is lesser than water, and why it is lesser than water? Because its dipole moment is, one can expect dipole moment is lesser, weaker than the dipole moment in water. Density, which density in the solid state is 1.64. Electrical conductivity is something like this. It is not very good conductor of electricity. These are the physical properties. Numerical problem from this volume. In the volumetric, when we see volumetric analysis, this kind of numerical problems we will see, and with that we also can also calculate the normality of H2O2. That we'll see in our next class. I'll stop here. So this numerical problem, some more numerical problems we'll see in the coming class on the next Saturday. So